all in all, I think that entire scene was probably the strongest part of the entire episode because we've said dozens of times over the last several seasons that the game needs this downtime. Like this is a scene that they didn't have to put in. Like they could have easily left it out, and the plot would have still made sense.
Mhm.
But because they included it here, and you had a chance to really get to know the characters more and get to be more attached to them and learning a lot more about their backstory, I thought they did a great job coming up with very creative reasons why each of these kids ended up here,
Mhm.
especially with Violet and Lewis. So, yeah, and then of course the singing. I think this entire hootenanny
Mhm.
was probably one of the strongest scenes in the entire season for me.
I think so too. I think it was a really emotional scene, and like it played with humor, played with you know definitely darker subjects, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I've always gone to the Telltale Walking Dead thing forward, the character interactions, not so much the combat, not so much the overarching story. I like getting to like have those interactions with the people and have the characters feel like organic.
I think part of the problem with seasons 2 and 3 and the reason they lacked all those moments was because those seasons 3 in particular were just rewritten so many different times. Like the production was in after episode 1 and 2 of New Frontier came out, the lead writer of both those episodes just abruptly left Telltale. And so a new writer had to come in and completely rewrite episodes 3, 4, and 5 like 2 months before they came out.
Yeah.
And then like 7 months before New Frontier itself came out, they rewrote episodes 1 and 2 again.
Yeah.
So it's like, geez, why?
I could be wrong, but I know that part of the reason why over the years people started liking Telltale less and less is the complaint that, oh, it's the same formula, they just keep recycling it over and over again, and it's pretty much the same thing with every game. I feel like even if they did do that, recycle things over and over again, but they added in more of this downtimey stuff, it would not have been as bad, because I feel like the downtime, spending time with your characters and getting to know them, that's the unique part. Those are the stuff that would have kept things more interesting and fresh. Because I mean, that was one of the reasons why I enjoyed season 1 so much. It part of it was the choices and the game mechanics of the choices, but looking back on it, like with the previous Telltale games that I also thoroughly enjoy, like even though I wasn't really that huge of a fan of, for example, the Minecraft story mode ones, there were some really cool one-on-one scenes with different characters that I found very memorable and really enjoyable, even if they lasted like 2 minutes. And Tales from the Borderlands is another example. Like the stuff that was going on between Reese and Vaughn, or Reese and Fiona, or Vaughn or Reese and Sasha. Like those were the parts of the games that I really, really loved, and not so much the formulaic, choices. So that is where I think Telltale could have done a better job.
And ironically, the Telltale's best game in terms of just raw combat is Minecraft 2. Because like in Minecraft Season 2, there's like boss battles and stuff, and I'm like,
really?
Like
more so than Batman, you would say?
Yeah, well, Batman was just like press shift and Q at the same time, whereas
True.
what
about the combat stuff in Wolf Among Us, or is that just more scripted scenes?
More so, episode 1 was a lot more choosy with the combat systems. Episode 2 onward, it was much more linear.
Okay.
Yeah,
rewrites.
I think you're right.
That's probably.
I think you're right, Jacob, because I think with Minecraft Story Mode, you actually had more WASD, like moving around and stabbing things, versus Wolf Among Us, where it really was more quick time events.
I mean, you were just clicking where you shoved people into the walls.
True. Yes.
Like you had 3 options, like the shelf, the bed, or the thing, or the sink, but all you were doing was just clicking on one of those three things.
Gotcha.
But the Wolf Among Us, you had to click really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Wolf Among Us is like the one Telltale game when I have to remind myself, okay, keep your hands on the keyboard 24/7 when you're playing this game.
Yeah, I'll have to keep that in mind. There was so then after the musical performance, we have another big scene that was one of my favorites from the episode.
Yes.
Oh yes. Oh, yes, the dream sequence.
Dream sequence. And who was in the dream sequence?
Who was there?
Lee
Lee was there.
As we get all antsy in our seats, like yay!
Mark, what were your thoughts on that scene with Lee and Clementine, the baby Clementine?
I mean, it was great. It actually, that scene actually made me sad that there wasn't something like that in A New Frontier, because we had something like that at the end of season 2 in the RV, and now this time we have the train. So I really like that there's that contrast there between this and season 2 regarding the Lee dream sequences.
Mm-hmm.
The last time we saw Lee, we saw him in another dream sequence at the end of season 2, which was the final episode of season 2.
Yeah.
Do you think it was interesting that they put this in not on the final episode, but the penultimate episode?
Yeah, that is a bit curious. I guess because this is a shorter season; it's only 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the placement.
Well, I mean, I think this season's longer than New Frontier, despite only being 4 episodes, because these episodes are like 3 hours as opposed to hour 10.
That is true.
That is true. I have a wishful thinking theory as to why they put Lee second to the last episode. So, just predicting what might happen in season 4, because I think a lot of people are predicting there's a possibility that Clem might die at the end of season 4. Regardless of whether or not she does die or not, I don't know if they would be able to pull this off. But this entire arc is Clementine's story. Yes, it's somewhat Lee's story at the beginning, and yes, it was kind of Javier's story in the season 3, but Clementine's been this consistent character all throughout. And the big theme of Clementine is she's grown up to be this woman, and along the way, all of these people have affected her and helped mold her to be who she is, and now she's molding someone else, AJ. So it'd be really cool if she had one more final dream sequence, maybe right before she could die,
right,
or is close to dying, and she has like a final moment with very principal characters that affected her along the way. And I'm talking Lee, I'm talking Kenny, I'm talking Luke, I'm talking Javier.
You just want Luke back.
I mean, yes, part of me just wants Luke back, but I think it would be really cool to have all of the characters that she bonded with over time.
Oh, dude, that would be an amazing book ending to this entire franchise. Then, right, if this is the final episode of everything.
And a small detail, if that's what they're going to do, add in, depending on if they're still alive or not, all the dead Garcia family members to that extra flashback scene or whatever.
Yeah,
maybe they share something. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, wow, my bad. What were you saying, Herc?
I was just saying it would be a great send off, like a great way to just wrap up Telltale's final game in a nice little bow, to like, as a tribute to all the fans who've stuck with them all this time down to the very end, to have this reunion, and this look back. I think that would be really cool. But that's kind of wishful thinking. I'm not necessarily holding my breath that that's going to happen, but that's the only reason why I would think they would not have saved Lee for the last episode, why they put him in the 3rd episode instead. Maybe it's because they're bringing him back for the 4th episode along with other people. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or it could just be as simple as they don't want to leave flashback and a Clementine death back to back.
I don't know. In terms of where it was placed here. I feel like it was a okay place because I feel like Lee's always been the source of like moral, like he's been a moral compass and always some sort of like inner self reflection, like reassurance, self reassurance for Clem.
Yeah.
And that was a really fun scene because I also loved in that sequence that was technically in terms of that dream sequence Lee's first time actually seeing adult Clem, as opposed to usually the younger Clem.
Yes.
One detail I really wish that they missed out on that I'm disappointed, because even season 2 included this detail with their Lee flashback. If you stole the food in episode 2 of season 1, they included the hoodie that she wore in the RV flashback, but they forgot that detail in this flashback.
Interesting. Oh, that would have been cool.
Yeah,
that would have been really neat. Cool.
They also correctly foreshadow the traumatic events that happened to Lewis or Violet, because like if Violet was the one that got kidnapped, she's like, what do you think Violet will say to you? But if Lewis was the one that got kidnapped, what do you think Lewis will say when he sees you?
All right, more on that later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, more on that later.
Which is nice to see that may or may not actually been parallel for both sides. I thought the punishment may have been a bit different, but nice to see that's going to be sort of the same. More on that later. So was there any like real particular like question answer, any particular like interaction you really did like about that scene with Lee? Because there was a couple I enjoyed.
Such as?
Oh, okay. Just having the option to explain, like how you think parenting, raising a child is so much harder, and like saying to Lee, like, you made it look so easy, and Lee's like, I was just making it up as I went along.
Yeah.
There's that. Calvin sharing with him, what you think of AJ and how you think AJ would get along with Lee and stuff. Like just that nice.
It makes me wonder things like, because of that, makes me wonder what Duck would have been like if he actually survived up to this point. Well, what would adult Duck be like? Right. Or what would a much older Ben be like? Or, or even what would an older Sarah be like? So it's just, I don't know, it just makes me think like how those characters would have been that we said goodbye to this entire time. So
right.
Anyway, all right. So enough of the past. Let's move back to the present. So we come to the point where we're gonna execute our plan to rescue our friends, and before that, James pulls us aside and he drops more backstory, which we love. And I, as obvious as it probably is, and I'm probably partial, I was very pleasantly surprised at his backstory, because
it's a contradiction with what we know about him. That he would that he would kill someone.
Yeah, there's that. There was thinking that he could never be social with anyone because he's very self-closed, but he actually had a very good relationship.
I think I wanted to bring this up earlier, but I forgot to. I think the only reason he thinks walkers have souls is because he's closed himself off from people relationships. Perhaps. It's like if he interacted with humans more often, I don't think he would have this belief personally.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah.
He looks for people where he normally wouldn't because he doesn't like to be around other people. He tries to familiarize himself.
They're almost it's like I kind of hate to say this, but it's almost like the walkers are his Wilson.
Yeah,
you know how because
he needs some form of human.
He needs a companion, and if he's not interacting with the living people, so he might as well see these people as So
that's a very good point.
I don't know. That's how I see it. But one of the things that he says near the end is he warns Clementine about AJ and how he's worried that if AJ kills again, that it might take him somewhere that he's not going to be able to recover from. And again, this goes back to me kind of being upset that you can't, explain killing to AJ in a way that I would explain to somebody in real life. Because for me, when you're in this type of environment, obviously I don't like killing. I'm a very pacifistic person to begin with. But I think that if you feel that you have to kill someone, it's just as important, if not more important, the reasoning behind killing someone. If you're trying to kill this is what Michonne says in the TV show, and I talked about this when I was Let's Playing. Michonne said that she doesn't like killing, she hates killing, but when she does kill, she makes sure that she kills with the right mindset, and by that I mean she doesn't kill people because out of like vengeance or out of hatred. She kills people out of protection or because it's necessary, not because she feels that somebody deserves it or needs a comeuppance. And so I think that's the gray line that I want to convey to AJ, but the game never actually like lets you do that. It's very black and white. It's like, if you make AJ kill someone, that's really, really bad and evil.
It's life. It's like, what?
Right. And you can't like give that nuance of, no, it's not just killing itself. It's what is the mentality behind you killing someone. That's important. What is your motivation? And that's important. And that's something that I understand that the game doesn't really like let you discuss, because it would be too easy if it did. But
clearly someone who doesn't pick berries fast enough deserves to be pushed off a roof.
True. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
So, and I at the time I told him, yes, I'm going to make sure AJ does not kill anybody, because he was kind of mirroring my own sentiments of, I don't want, following this game's logic, I don't want AJ to become a merciless person, because I'd feel horribly guilty leaving behind someone like that when I could have done a better job of, leading them more appropriately and correctly. I told him okay, and then we kill a walker, we get the gunk guts on us. I guess we brought this up. So I don't know if it was the same for you guys. My recording didn't show it off too badly, which I'm thankful for. But when I was playing the game, the actual game itself, and once when I was outside the barn before going into that whole walker sequence, and again during the upcoming action segment, my game like stuttered a lot. Or like I would feel like, and I don't know, and I'm pretty sure I had a good graphics card. I'm pretty sure like it was running everything just fine, but I just noticed some bit of like stuttering with the frame rate as I was going through those sections. Was that, so that was not just me?
I got that too.
Okay.
See, to me, stuttering frame rate has always just been a Telltale staple.
But it almost felt like rubber banding for some parts of it, though. That's how bad it felt like for me.
Well, I mean, it's better than all the jump cuts that you got in like season 3, for example. Like you would be having a conversation with somebody, but because your conversation could be affected by choices, there's a bunch of jump cuts during the middle of the conversation because, these players don't get this part of the conversation. So I'll take slowdown over that.
So what did you think, Hark, of that then?
For me, like the jitteriness was more pronounced because during that action sequence where you're trying to shield yourself behind walkers while they're firing, like I had to do that multiple times because of issues with the gameplay. So yeah, that was I must have gone through that a dozen times before I finally got past it. It was really annoying.
Yeah, stay behind the walkers. And,
I could not get past that for the life of me.
For reference, did we all here play it on PC, or did any of us play it on like some console or something?
PC.
Were you on
Mark? Were you P?
Okay.
Okay.
And don't use. If you're me and I used a laptop, make sure you have a USB mouse because the bow and arrow just straight up is unplayable if you're only using a touchpad.
Oh yeah, I bet. Nope. Yeah, because you have to like double. Yeah, no, definitely don't.
I was like, oh my god, that was part of why I hated the ending fight scene at the end of episode 2 so much with all the fire burning walkers. I'm like, oh my god. Oh wait, I have a USB mouse, but it's up 2 flights of stairs and it's 4 a.m. I want to finish the episode. I don't want to wake anybody up.
Right.
Oh.
So mild stuttery action sequence, some stealth, running around. I don't know. I thought it was a funny little idea to keep in mind is that walkers can just walk underwater because they're dead. It's neat.
That answers the question that Lily had back in season 1. What, we're going to get on a boat because we assume they can't swim?
They can swim.
Like, that was one throwaway line back in season 1.
I remember that's true.
I guess technically the Telltale Michonne miniseries confirmed that in the first episode, if you played that.
I need to play that.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Oh, darn.
You eventually make it onto the ship,
Mhm.
and then you leave. I think you leave the bomb first.
Yeah.
You put the bomb where it's supposed to be. Then you manage to find your companions with Minerva,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be
Yes.
there.
Minerva will be there, and then you'll find Omar
In a seam.
and
In one
Asim.
cell, and then Lewis or Violet in the cell of their own, depending
Correct.
on your choices.
Yeah.
Yes. And what I love is that when you finally discover Lewis or Violet in their cells, their attitudes towards you are very different.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very different.
Violet's attitude towards you is much more contrived.
Yeah, I heard that if Violet was captured, she is not happy with you at all.
She's in the
And-
early stages of being brainwashed like Minerva, and she actually physically turns on you and takes sides with Delta.
Yeah. Whereas,
How did that feel to you, Mark, having that suddenly happen?
well, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had. So yeah, I did have Lewis with me. So for Violet to be so pissed off, yeah, it was a bit frustrating, and maybe I don't know, maybe at a disadvantage. But honestly, I'd rather have Violet pissed at me than the alternative what you guys got.
Yeah.
I might sound like a prick when I say this, but like I think what happened to Lewis is like much more interesting from a story perspective. Whereas like what Violet's attitude towards you just seems like out of nowhere.
Yeah, so I was curious. So I know that with Lewis, his tongue is cut off.
Mhm.
Is that not what happens to Violet?
No, she just doesn't like you anymore.
Oh, interesting. So they don't actually. Okay.
If you
Well, that-
romanced her but then saved Lewis, she breaks up with you.
I mean, fair enough. But
Okay, makes sense. Okay. So that instant, yeah, I thought that they did the same thing. They end up doing the same thing to Violet, but apparently
Right,
they don't,
or-
and she's just really upset at you.
Yeah. Or. Yeah. That's. I thought it was gonna be something like that.
Yeah, Violet
Yeah.
is pretty much being turned into Mini 2.0 if she was the one that was kidnapped.
Yep.
Interesting.
Um,
All right.
Because
Interesting.
oh yeah. Speaking of which, like you trust Minnie at first, and she turns on you.
Yeah.
Knocks you unconscious.
Yeah. That's. Yeah. That was really disappointing.
Because I thought there would have been some like progress, and then we start formulating a plan to escape. Asim and Omar merely exist in that cell just to remind us that they exist. I don't think they actually say or do anything really.
Well, you
compelling.
can talk to them, and Asim says the reason why he and Omar are shutting up is because they said that the reason why they cut Lewis's tongue out is because he wouldn't shut up. So their fear here is if they don't shut up, they're going to get their tongues cut out.
Fair. So I guess just jumping a little bit ahead, then we try to escape, but then we have a big confrontation.
Yeah. Lily comes in, and
Oh.
it's that very. Yes. Go ahead.
I just had a quick thought. I'm curious about when we're with Lewis. When the minute Lily walks in, Lewis immediately recoils in fear in the corner. How does Violet react to Lily entering the cell?
That's
I think
a good
she's
question.
just pouting. I don't remember. I think she was just pouting on the corner.
Okay,
Yeah, she wasn't.
Okay.
She wasn't cowering.
okay. I didn't know if she'd be even. I didn't know if she'd even be like relieved or like more like finally someone I can relate to kind of attitude almost. But okay, that indifference is that makes sense for her.
So we get the villain monologue.
Mhm.
Basically, we get Lily giving her villain monologue.
Never wanted much. I just.
Yes.
But
Honestly, I
And
had much more. I liked Abel's villain monologue at the prologue of this episode more because it was
Yeah.
made you actually feel sympathy towards him. Where it's just like, oh, remember Larry? Oh yeah, he didn't like me wasting electricity or something like that.
He didn't like
Actions have illustrations to make you know that actions have consequences. So he cut the power out so you wouldn't leave the lights on ever again.
mm,
See, I wasn't. Yeah, I was very much over Lily very early on.
mhm.
Um, I was not interested in listening to anything she was saying.
I was over
But
Lily
like,
in season 1 when she killed Doug.
Yeah.
oh yeah, me too.
I
Like,
Although in her defense, she was aiming for Ben, and Doug just jumped in front of the bullet for Ben. But
I would have. I probably would have been a lot more cold and just uncaring to her had I not had two weapons pointed at me in that whole sequence. So I had to sort of
yeah,
humor her a little bit, but I was very much just like, okay, we get it. You're evil. You have a distorted view on reality because of a screwed up childhood.
yeah,
Little villain quote, villain cliche tacked on the wall, troubled childhood. Um,
yeah,
it's
so
also
then,
interesting when you contrast, because I remember when season 2 was first in development, they were originally going to make Kenny Carver, but then they decided against that because they thought Kenny needs to be a side main character, the deuteragonist, however you pronounce that, not a bad guy. But then they bring Lily back as the bad guy. So I'm like, that's their original ideas with Kenny, but like repurposed for season 4 with Lily.
I think it makes sense with Lily though. I don't think it makes sense for Kenny to be the bad guy because the only reason why Kenny does what he does is because he's ultimately trying to protect somebody. Whereas Lily, like, her motivations are not necessarily protecting somebody, she's just protecting herself. So it's a different dynamic, I think.
Yeah.
okay.
It was a bit of a power it was a bit of a power struggle between those two women, very strong women for different reasons.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely interesting. I do enjoy the Clem Lily scenes, and them being rivals in this game. It's really really interesting, especially knowing where they came from in the first season.
Yeah.
I don't really have too much to say, although I did enjoy the reference to Larry, because we all remember Larry from the first season.
Yeah. Well, when she brought up Larry, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's definitely going to have me warm up to you even more. Bring up Larry, who I definitely was over with." Like,
When she brought up Larry, did you say so I guess asshole runs in the family, or did you say, oh, I've always hated Larry?
Oh, I've always hated Larry.
I gave her the sassy silence, the sassy Clem silence. I basically, pretty much that's what I do to characters I don't care for in this game. Is I'm like, you don't even deserve a response from me. Like, I do not like you enough to even give you like even acknowledgement that I even listen to what you said. So I'm not even going to respond to you.
Mhm.
But then there's a choice between they threaten. Well, I think for me, they threaten to cut off Violet's fingers or something
Or
along those
Lewis's
lines.
fingers?
Or Lewis's fingers.
And then AJ's going to intervene. You say, no, AJ, don't. Or you let AJ do what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Which I was worried about AJ, so I was worried about him getting caught in the crossfire, but considering there was considering there was a woman with a cleaver who was
Yeah.
very much holding with malicious intent, I thought
Yeah.
if AJ gets involved in this, it is not going to end well for him. So I told him to immediately back off, which
Mhm.
resulted in Violet and or Lewis, depending on circumstances.
See, like, I'm like, AJ has plot armor, so let him do what he's going to do.
What? Yeah. What was the consequence for telling AJ to back off? Did
They do succeed in chopping off
Oh.
Violet's pinky.
Oh.
They lose a pinky.
Because I was a fool in thinking that a 8-year-old with no weapon could lunge at a woman with a cleaver, and the woman with the cleaver would go,
He's
you know
6.
what? That's it. You know what? 6. I was foolishly assuming that a 6-year-old leaping at a woman with a cleaver would lead to the woman with the cleaver going, yeah, you know what? This really isn't my thing, and backing off and not cutting off the finger. I was expecting her to just elbow him and chop it off anyway, and I was like, that would be horrible.
He bites a chunk of her ear off.
Jeez. And so does Lily just kind of like, you know what? Forget the punishment. Does she just call it off, or do they just ignore it?
After Dorian throws AJ off her shoulder, he like spits out the chunk of her ear that was in his mouth, and then the scene plays out of AJ going, "I killed Marlon, and I'll kill you too, Lily." And then Lily hauls him up to the front of the deck.
They just ignore the punishment that.
Well, Dorian was about to kick AJ or something, and Lily told her not to, and she was mad that she didn't get to take vengeance on AJ.
I see.
And meanwhile, Violet's just all like, "They forgot about me? Cool, okay."
I get to keep.
So they chop off the pinky, and then Lily doesn't haul AJ upstairs?
Oh, no, either way, AJ's going to get hauled up because AJ's going to, like, he'll still scream and he'll still be like, I killed Mark. Either way. But
I see. Okay.
We already bring up the bombshell that Minnie brings up.
The consequence of that choice is either no more pinky for Lily or for Lewis or Violet, or Dorian is missing part of her ear.
Gotcha. I'm so sorry. Did we already bring up the bombshell that Minnie brings up during Lily's big confrontation?
Oh,
Bombshell?
She killed Sophie.
We learned the true death of Sophie. Originally, she said that Sophie died in some battle, a hero. She killed Sophie. Because Sophie had convinced her that we should go back to Erickson, and when they were found out, probably is like I honestly don't think Minnie did it initially. She was probably pressured by everybody, and so
she pretended to go along with Sophie and then killed her when she was least suspecting it while they were on the raft, and then went back to Delta.
Really? So it was always. I kind of had the impression. I had the impression that. I did not have the impression that Minnie was like pretending just to get close enough to her to kill her. I had the impression of Minnie went with Sophie because Lily says that of course they didn't get far. I had the impression of Minnie was convinced by Sophie to go out, but then when they were caught out of fear, Minnie did that to try and save herself.
Well, Lily says to Minnie, why would you kill your own sister? Minnie responds with, she was twisting my head with her lies. I needed to show my loyalty to the place I call home.
Well, of course, that opinion could have been formed after the fact with more gaslighting and brainwashing and all that.
It's very ambiguous, and I like that it's left up to interpretation.
That is true. I have mine, and yeah.
So things escalate very quickly up at the top of the ship, and like basically there's a giant choice at the very end because you confront Lily and
10 and James are there.
10 and James are there, and then
for some reason not Willie and Ruby though.
They got away via the river and stuff.
They're the only two characters to confirm to still be alive at the end of the episode, other than Clementine because she has plot armor. Willie and Ruby.
Everyone else is MIA, but
I guess Rosie too.
More on that later. So they find
big choice.
James,
yeah. They find James, and then AJ has an opportunity to shoot Lily, because she's vulnerable, and James is like telling AJ not to shoot, and then I think other people are trying to tell him to shoot, and ultimately Clementine has to make a call on whether or not to tell AJ to do or not do. What was your mentality with that choice, Mark?
So I told AJ to shoot Lily.
Okay, and why is that?
So obviously this comes off the conversation we had with James about AJ taking another life, and he's just going to become like a ruthless killer. See, I don't necessarily agree with James that just because he kills someone, like he's just gonna become a ruthless killer. Like we don't know that, and especially with Clem's guidance, he could learn all these little nuances of taking a life, so to speak. And so with the Lily thing, we know we can't trust Lily. Her word doesn't mean anything to us, right?
Yeah.
She's lied before. She's manipulative. There was no reason to
believe her.
To believe her and let her live. She's. I mean, even ever since the first season, like you could argue she's been an antagonist towards Lee, towards Clem. So she's just not someone that was someone we could trust and just take the risk of letting her live, because as we'll get into the alternative, that turns out to be right.
Yeah. How about you, Jacob? When you first played the game, how did that play out for you?
I told her not to shoot. Told him not to shoot Lily.
Okay.
2 reasons.
And what was your reasoning? Go ahead.
My main reason was so consistency for me is key. Like when I played in the earlier episodes, I'm like, AJ, why did you shoot Marlon? We already resolved the situation. He was no longer a threat. That was dumb. You need to apologize. And then when he was like, oh, I got dibs on killing Abel, please. I'm like, this is way too casual for you to be talking about killing right now. So I said no. So I'm like, if for me to tell him to shoot Lily here, I think would be a little bit hypocritical of me. And then my other reason was, I don't think Lily's gotten enough screen time yet. Like, compare the screen time Kenny got before he died in season 2 to the screen time Lily got in this season before it's like, oh, does she die or not? I'm like, yeah. I couldn't have predicted what she was going to do, though.
What does she end up doing if you don't have AJ shoot her?
Oh,
she stabs Jane. Not James through the back of his neck.
We have to talk about that, because that, I think, right now
needs an instant conflict. Act irrationally.
I'm just saying right now. I'm saying no. That is bull. That is easily the stupidest death I have ever witnessed in this series.
Really?
I've seen some dumb deaths, some partially due to incompetency. I still think that the death that Luke suffered was dumb because I felt like he deserved more, and Bonnie clearly had absolutely no idea how the heck surface tension worked.
Yeah. I thought, yeah.
But with James, because he gets killed from this, the fact that we've just now seen that Lily is a monster. He himself has this conversation. He witnesses this, and he calls Lily a monster and treats her like she is scum and someone to be feared in terms of she is mean, she's ruthless, and all this. And his next and the camera play also was leading way too up ahead to it. Like his next step after we've just told, because I told AJ to not shoot Lily as well. His next step was to now walk in front of AJ, putting himself in between AJ and Lily, who is on the ground with a knife. Sure, it's embedded in her leg, but she still has a knife and is definitely not down for the count. And stand right there perfectly. I'm like, James, do you want to maybe look and keep the perpetrator in your eyesight at all times? And
right,
it was it was the most easily avoided death.
Yeah.
If he didn't have to stand right there to have that conversation. He could have standed to the side. The
most easable, avoidable death is Ava's if she survived the execution in New Frontier. Because her death, where the walker just jumps out of the car when you could clearly see the camera was showing inside the car, it was empty, and the walker just jumps out and just knocks her off the cliff.
Okay,
and everyone's like, "Oh, goodbye, Ava."
Well, but going back to this, I do totally agree with Lucky Jack that just because we tell AJ not to shoot doesn't mean that we're dropping our guard.
And
so I think that's
right. And this is if I'm so sorry, if this was like one of the Erickson kids or like Sarah or someone else who wasn't as
Yeah.
experienced and wasn't like understanding the actual true dangers of humans who are like actually like this
Right.
ruthless and stuff, that'd be one thing. This is James who lived with the Whisperers,
Right.
did what they did, killed people. It's been 8
Yes.
years into this apocalypse.
Right.
Why does he not know better?
Right, exactly. Yes, I definitely agree with that. I think if he survived this long, then he would not have
Turned his back
conveniently
entirely.
because of plot. Yeah, exactly. Because that is very irritating about the choice. Is that the assumption that AJ, we're telling AJ not to shoot Lily. Therefore, we trust Lily enough that we're just gonna turn our back on her. I was like, no, that's not what it means. Like that's not what it means at all. So yes, I totally agree with you that was a very frustrating
Plot device.
that yeah. So that is, I find that really frustrating.
Need some instant conflict. Have characters act out of character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I explained during the scene that again, I reiterated what I said about Michonne, where it's the act of killing is one thing, but the motivation or the reasoning behind your killing is another thing. And I felt no problem or remorse whatsoever to tell AJ to shoot Lily, because while Lily was like begging for her life, I was like, well, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And also I was saying, what were you saying about consequences for your actions, Lily? Like, you've already made your coffin. You got to lie on it now, sweetheart. Like, you've made it. Now you got to lie on it. So, I had no problem with AJ shooting her. What I did have a problem with, and I did, like, during the Let's Play, like, scold AJ, was shooting her the first time was legit. Shooting her 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times after that was not legit.
So he does fully kill her if you tell her to shoot.
He kills her, and then when she's already dead, he just keeps firing again and again and again and again and again.
Not good.
Well, that's the thing, and that's why I was really frustrated, because I'm like, the game doesn't allow me to say
stop. That's enough.
Right, like shooting her is one thing and killing her, but having that pure like hatred and vengeance such that he's wasting precious bullets, beyond the fact that he's wasting precious bullets, but the motivation behind shooting her is different now that he's shooting her after the fact.
It makes it seem like he's pursuing satisfaction when she should never be doing.
And I feel that it's, again, annoyingly just the game trying to push this black and white, this very black and white.
I would love if just during that entire sequence, just in bold red letters, the word "bad" just starts fading in over that scene of bad.
I think part of me just felt like
if you told AJ he was justified in killing Marlon, then it plays out the way that it plays out uniformly if you shoot Lily. But if you chose to say no, you need to atone for what you did to Marlon, then it gives you an option to have him not shoot her an additional 10 times.
Yeah.
The more branching stories you have, the better.
Basically, I really wanted Clementine to pull out a spray bottle and start spraying AJ. No, bad, stop, bad.
But is he a cat?
That's what I really wanted her to do.
I don't know.
Stop that.
Ultimately, I believe that Lily deserved something like that, considering the lives she had ruined. I just don't, and the fact that she pushed a sister to kill her own sister because of her own twisted like sense of reality. But I just didn't want it to be by AJ's hands. I wanted to try and meet James halfway and not have AJ do that. I'd rather have AJ still try to be somewhat sheltered in that sense, but
I understand that.
But
let's not forget Lily's side of the story of kidnapping the twins. Oh, it was hard at first, but like we provided food, shelter, and clothes for these girls, and all we asked in return was help defend the group from the people we're at war with. That's all.
So it sounded like ultimately it sounded like on either end we still kind of feel a little bit chipped out.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, I wanted to mention this, but this goes back a few scenes. There, the detail different when you break out of the cell of when Minerva attacks Clementine is about to stab her. Like, if Violet's there, she is forced to shoot Minerva with a crossbow, mirroring Clementine shooting Kenny in season 2. But if Lewis is there, because Violet doesn't like you, he ends up accidentally Dorian, a person who cut off Violet or Lewis's finger with the cleaver. So depending on choices, either she's another determinate character.
Interesting. Okay. And then, well, the bomb blows up, and then that's pretty much when the episode ends. So, yeah, that leaves us with one more episode left.
It's called "Take Us Back," the name of the song from the closing credits of the finale episode of season 1.
Oh, I love that. I did not notice that. That's really cool attention to detail. What do you guys... Well, I guess I should ask, what do you guys think they're gonna do in the next episode? They only got one left. Like,
hopefully they don't pull another Joan or Clint scenario where we don't know what happened to Lily or James, depending on which one's alive, or it's just their whereabouts are unknown. We actually get to resolve that, but other than that, something heavily AJ and Clem focused, and maybe something more romance stuff. I don't know. Hopefully, episode 4 is Omar's time to shine.
I would like that, actually. How about you, Mark? What do you predict for the 4th episode and final episode?
I'm actually going to piggyback off of that. It's actually going to be kind of a rant, so bear with me. So
please.
So one thing that I really, really hate about the entire series is that there tends to be storylines and characters that Telltale introduces, and then it goes absolutely nowhere. Like the 400 Days people.
Yes.
No clue what happened to them.
Yes.
So yeah, the 400 Days crew, the people at the end of season 2, Mike, Bonnie, Arvo, completely MIA. The Garcias, Javi, his family, don't know what happened to them. I actually thought, here's what I thought going into season 4. I actually thought the whole season was going to be the process of getting AJ back from the McCarroll Ranch, and then like in the final episode, you go back to Richmond, and that's how the series ends with them in Richmond. Because remember, Javi specifically says, "Bring him back, Clem." So that's kind of the trajectory.
Optional.
Yeah, that is true, but that was kind of the trajectory that I was getting from at the end of A New Frontier. And then when it says Clementine's story will be to be continued, and so knowing that there was going to be one more season to get AJ back, that's kind of what I thought. But then we go into the first episode. It's been a few years. They never went back to Richmond, and it's like, what the hell? It's like that's another storyline they dropped. Now, the silver lining with this is it looks like we will be getting an explanation in this final episode. What happened at the McCarroll Ranch? Why didn't they go back to Richmond? But I still feel like even if they come up with a good reason, it's like you set something up and then you drop it again, and they've done it too many times over the course of these games. It's just, I feel like no matter how good this final episode, this series finale is going to be, one thing that's going to stick with me are these lingering plot threads. Probably the biggest one is Krista. I mean, Hark, you were joking about it before about the leader potentially being Krista, but I kind of almost hope that's the case too, because I want to see what happens. If nothing else, if there's one character that I want to see come, if another character is going to come back, I want it to be Krista. She's like the one character that I care about, that I want to see get closure, because there's no closure with anybody else. Ranto.
No, I'm glad you said all that. Knowing what they ended up doing for the plot, as opposed to what you went in thinking the plot was going to be, would you still have preferred that they went with the plot that you had thought they were going to be doing?
I mean, ultimately, it's their story. They can do whatever they want to. And if they personally felt that this was the story they wanted to tell for the final season, and of course, we still have one episode left, so I'm going to reserve my judgment until we experience it. But I still kind of would have preferred that,
Okay.
that they still went with the whole Richmond thing.
Yeah, because I agree with you that does definitely make sense trajectory-wise. At the same time, I do find the story of these kids compelling, just because it's very different from the other seasons. In the other seasons, you mostly had adults dealing with the apocalypse, and now you actually have a group of kids dealing with the apocalypse. So you have this like Lord of the Flies kind of thing going on, which is a very different type of story. So based just purely on that, I am enjoying that aspect of the season, but I am curious as to what it would have been like plot-wise if they went with what you thought. I'm sorry, Logan, what were you going to say?
I also like that, like, compared to seasons 2 and 3, and all seasons compared to seasons 1, 2, and 3, this season you're more like physically in one location for much of the season.
To further respond to Mark, I would love to see, and again, I'm not holding my breath, but I would love to see in the epilogue them at least trying to tie those loose ends and giving a blurb of what happened to Arvo, what happened to Mike, what happened to Bonnie. I'm not expecting them to, but it'd be really nice if they could at least give us that, just so that this is their chance to tie up those loose ends instead of just leaving them hanging. But who knows? Who knows if that's what we'll get?
If I may challenge that, I've personally never really had much interest in reuniting with Krista, just because I think it's a little unrealistic for there to be 3 people that Clem got separated from to just casually bump into again. Like, we first did it with Kenny, and then Javi did that with David, and now Clementine did it again with Lily. I'm like, if we do it again with Krista, it's like... And I think there was a podcast shortly after the finale of season 2 came out, and the host asked them about Krista, and the director of that episode said something to the effect of, sometimes you get separated from people and you just never see them again, and that's the reality of the world. And I just think that's much more interesting. And yeah, it sucks that you don't get to know what happened to her, but like, that sometimes that's the consequence of having a huge cast of characters. And it's like, I feel like, even though they were trying to subtly hint that the Garcia family may have been involved with Delta's war, like, how much more of story can you tell with them? I feel like their arc was done. Just because they're still alive doesn't mean you should continue their story more. Like, they're still alive at Richmond.
I think you make very valid points, Jacob. I do agree with you that it would be a little contrived if yet again Clementine runs into somebody like Krista. I get why. I totally agree with both of you, basically. I totally understand both of your points of views.
I think one of the only benefits of rewrites was the original draft of New Frontier, David didn't exist. He was added within the rewrites that were made like 7 months before the game came out, after they showed the teaser trailer at E3.
To make the plot even spicier, I guess. I don't know why they did what they did, but like for me, when I run tabletop campaigns, and when I run tabletop campaigns, I try really, really hard to tie up loose ends, because I do start some storylines in those campaigns or drop in characters, and then I still have like players asking, I'm wondering if we're ever going to learn whatever happened to such and such a character. And I'm like, yes, I totally have something planned for such and such a character. And I'm like writing notes. I remember to tie up loose ends about such and such a character in a future session. So it's hard. I know, as somebody who does tabletop gaming, I try to tie up loose ends somehow, even if it's not necessarily them bumping into somebody, but maybe somehow they get information about what happened to the person, or at worst, that's a question they can ask me during a vlog, because we always have a vlog after a session, and players are able to ask me, so is there whatever happened to such and such, and if I feel there's nothing I'm going to be able to deal with that character in game, I will just answer the question. Or if I feel like, well, you might have that question answered later, then I'll like tell them that. But in a video game, we don't have that luxury necessarily. So.
And plus, I kind of hate the rule that in the Walking Dead universe, implied death just isn't straight up allowed at all. Because like you physically have to see them die, or else could still be alive. It's like, like after what Kenny went through in season 1. And what you could do with Abel in the first episode of season 4. At least with him, though, they added the detail of him. He has a missing arm from then on. Whereas they didn't even go that route with Kenny. He just straight up was just alive. And it wasn't even the Walker guts, because he was learning that for the first time when Clem brought that up in Carver's camp in episode 3. So it wasn't even that either. It was just the writers was like, yeah, he got lucky. Really lucky.
Yeah.
And I brought up implied death because I remember you hear Krista scream and a gunshot in the background regardless of what you do. So I feel like that was supposed to imply that the scavenger shot her, but again, it didn't happen on screen. So
right, yeah. Do either of you have any final thoughts on this episode overall versus the other episodes of this season? How do you think this one matched up with the other two?
It was okay. I mean, I don't think I like it better. I don't think it's necessarily better or worse than the others. They're all pretty equal to me.
I like this season more in terms of the writing, but I like the other seasons more in terms of the gameplay because there's less buggy, and like because like I hate extending my gameplay an extra 30 to 45 minutes just because I can't stun a walker or those invisible walls, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But I think I thought Clem and Violets were adorable in the beginning. I liked the prologue with Abel at the beginning, and I liked the whole bomb explosion was exciting because like first we had Mitch and now Willie's building a bomb. You got a bomb theme at the school here. So I think it compares very nicely. I think the best episode of the season so far is still episode 1.
Like I said, I felt that the downtime was one of my favorites in the season when they were doing the Hootenanny. I did have issues with the end choices. With the whether Ada should shoot or not shoot. I do like how many of our choices did end up mattering in that whether you rescued Violet versus Lewis and how their arcs or branches were pretty different from each other. Again, I didn't particularly care for the gameplay as much for this one. And the James's barn scene, I've had mixed feelings about the James Barnes part. But compared to the other two, I think I'm going to have to go with Mark and say that I don't feel that this is necessarily weaker or stronger than the other two episodes. And if you were to ask me which of the three do I think was the strongest, I honestly can't really say I'd be able to pick one because I think they're both are about the same. So I'm expecting the fourth one to be better. I don't know if it's going to wow me, but I'm hoping that we get as much closure, as possible. And if they're able to put in some fan servicey things, because this is the finale episode and the final Telltale game in existence, I'm curious to see what they do to dedicate that, if at all. I hope they do. And it's more than just, a one-shot thing at the end. Thank you for playing our games, Telltale. I hope it's more than just that. I hope it's something maybe not necessarily just like the big reunion of characters in a dream sequence, like I said. But if it was something to that caliber, I would be very, pleasantly satisfied.
You might have some idea, because I remember they had a Q&A a couple months ago, and Telltale is very good about not spoiling anything. So that's why I feel okay talking about this. Is someone asked, will there be a similar choice screen like the one in the final episode of Game of Thrones?
Oh.
And I think they said something along the lines of not I called the Game of Thrones, but something like that, where
Okay.
they would go over a ton of choices.
Okay. I would love to see that if that's what they end up doing.
Only closing thoughts I can say is that, as far as trading, passing the baton on to Skybound, I think they did a good job. I'm still definitely looking forward to the 4th episode, and I'm very much relieved that I'll get to have that sense of resolution. Mechanically, I wish the game didn't stutter as much. I like the dialogue and the interactions the most still with the characters I did care about. And hoping they can sort of tie this all together, because I feel like they have kind of the next episode is not going to be easy to kind of pull off in a way that satisfies as many people as they can, because it's going to be, especially seeing how pretty polarizing the ending to this episode was, depending on choices. But yeah, I still definitely enjoyed it, and I'm glad to still be doing this and going on this little journey.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, we have one more episode left, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this all culminates. I definitely am glad that this is the final season, honestly, because I think that drawing it even more to yet another season is too much already. So,
or a Javier season 2 after this.
Or a Javier season 2, yes. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and talking about this game for a couple hours. And hopefully we'll see you guys on the finale episode. So, anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that during this time you learned something or found something entertaining or interesting during our conversation. And I hope you will join us again, not only for the Let's Play, but for the Let's Talk that will come after that. And hopefully we'll have plenty to discuss and talk about and dissect with the finale. With the finale episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, love yourselves and love each other. See ya!